Welcome to Uninterrupted, the podcast from 4BIS Cybersecurity, where we dive into the world of technology, cybersecurity, and IT solutions. We help your business stay protected, whether you're a business owner, IT professional, or just tech curious. This is your go-to source for staying informed and staying secure.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Uninterrupted. I'm your host, Chris Hammonds, and with me today is our COO, Jon Fausz. Jon, how are we doing today?
Doing pretty good, man.
Good. And, as always, we're going to get right into it here. So, Jon, there's a couple of questions that I have for you. I hear this a lot, and a lot of companies ask me, they say, hey, in 2020, I invested all kinds of money in the cybersecurity. Why do I need to keep changing what I'm doing? Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Why do they need to keep changing, first off? And then, is it normal for a company to kind of have that reaction?
Yeah. So cyber attacks are on the rise. Things have changed, and cyber attacks are way up from year to year. And what we're seeing is that the threat landscape is changing, and the hackers are evolving their technologies and their methodologies because companies have defended themselves. And when you realistically look at cybersecurity, what has happened is the world that we were dealing with in 2020, or really the half decade before that, was the large providers, your large companies, your P&Gs of the world, and U.S. banks and those types of places locked their stuff down, and they made it harder to hack. And so what happened was the cyber criminals looked and saw that 50-something% of the U.S. economy was small, medium business, and they're effectively not doing anything for cybersecurity past having a firewall and maybe some antivirus software. That, hey, this is now a ripe target. We're going to go after them because they're not looking for the same things the enterprises are looking at. It's easier to hack. And these enterprises that are doing the hacking are looking to make money. And it's easier for them to get a score going after the places that aren't effectively protecting themselves.
Gotcha. So basically, it's like when one door shuts, another one's opening. They're evolving. They got to keep trying to find something that works, essentially, right? So as their threats evolve, we have to stay on top of that and evolve with them. And sometimes that might be, maybe I need to do more for cybersecurity. Maybe I need to change what I'm doing, essentially.
Well, what goes on is what you were doing in the past is no longer effective. But that doesn't mean that you have to stop doing what you were doing in the past. If we look at a thing like firewalls in 2014 or so, 2015, a next generation firewall that was looking at the traffic coming in would be able to block most of the stuff that was coming into your network. Well, as things got more encrypted with HTTPS encryption, as every website that you went to started to be encrypted, then the firewall couldn't open up the networking information coming through and look at it and say, hey, this is something bad, we're going to stop this. So then we had to move our detections to the endpoint. So that brings in more risk because I'm letting things get farther into the network before we detect, respond, and recover to that sort of item that happens. But it's just effectively what we had to do as the internet technology changed. And so that change forced you to have to make a change in the way your cyber protections are. We couldn't get rid of firewalls. They're still important. They're still there to block the old threats that are coming through, and you need to do them for the low-hanging fruits. That means you have to add additional protections on top of what you were already doing. And so it's expansive, it's ever-changing, and it's staying on top of the tradecraft that the hackers are using, but also being in front of it and being adaptive and being able to change and making sure you have the resiliency and the elasticity to keep up with how the threats are changing.
Gotcha. Okay, so essentially, if a company were to say, I just wanted to be completely locked down, I mean, that's not really feasible, right? Like, I mean, if you have to have some type of balance. You have to essentially let a little bit of risk through at some point, right?
Yes. So this is a big misconception that we see, and I'll use spam filters as an example of this. People are like, how come the spam filter doesn't block all the bad things that come through? And if it did, it would make your email unusable. We have to allow some risk in that to allow regular business to come through, because if I were to completely tighten up the spam filter completely, you would have so many false positives saying that marketing emails and regular client emails and sometimes email attachments and other items in somebody's email, their signature items, they'll get flagged and they'll say, hey, this is a spammy thing, and it'll get blocked and legitimate business email won't come through. Also, just using the internet is risky in and of itself. I have a lot of people that have a misconception that they think the internet's safer than it is. And I like to think the internet is the bad part of town. Think about the worst part of town you can think of and then multiply that by 1,000, and that's maybe getting close to what the internet is. Well, what does that look like? Well, you need to have your guard up when you're on your internet. You can't trust the veracity of anything that's on the internet, including an attachment and email. People get their emails taken over, and that person you were emailing with a week before that's sending you an attachment, if the hacker has taken over their email, that attachment that you're getting, that you've been replying back and forth, might not be legitimate. So you have to be looking out for what is the behavior that's going on, what happened with that. That link that you click on and you download all the time, if a hacker has taken over that website, they could change that link in the interim of time since the last time you clicked on it. So you have to say, okay, we know that we have to use the internet, we have to use email, we have to do these items in order for us to do business, but how do I look at that and say, these are the things that could potentially be an issue. I'm going to now look out for unusual behavior. I'm going to allow a little bit of risk through the network in order for your employees to do their jobs, and then look for different ways to identify, to detect, to respond, and recover from potential things that you would see on the network or potential unwanted access or nefarious user behavior.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so not only can they make changes to the website, they can align that with the phishing email you got. So if there's a phone number listed in there, they could actually change the number on the website to match that, and it looks completely legitimate.
Yeah.
You call and give them all the information you want because it looks legitimate.
Yeah, that's correct. And so when I do user trainings with people, and I do a lot of user trainings, I'll often tell them that if you get something from your bank that's asking for information, well, pull out your credit card. Generally, there's a number that's on your credit card that they're not going to be able to spoof. And so you know that's a legitimate way to get a hold of them if you have a question or an item like that. You have to have a certain amount of trust, but like the old saying, trust but verify, we're looking to do that as well.
And that brings me to another point, too. You know, one thing you also want to do is you want to really check the URL of the website you're on. I got a phishing email the other day, and it was from Venmo with 2 N's instead of Venmo.
Yeah.
And had I not paid attention to that or caught that, I would have thought it was completely legitimate. I use Venmo all the time. So not only are they spoofing the website, they're also doing doppelganger
Doppelganger
domains. Yeah, so sending emails like that.
Yeah, and we have a whole article about this, and I've gone into this in depth in the past, so please go out to our blog and look for some of these things that we have there. But doppelganger domains are domains that look like there's something else. And so it'll be a situation where maybe there's an extra L in the domain name or an S. So instead of networksociety.com, which I don't even know if that exists, they made it networkssociety.com, and you might not, or your end users might not notice that extra S that's in there. Well, they do this because it works. And as you're busy and you're going through things, they know that your end users are not going to spot that as easily, and they wouldn't continue to do it if it wasn't effective. We look for things like that, and we encourage, if you're a business owner and you have a domain name out there, we run reports for people that look for common doppelganger domains, or sometimes they're called typo-squatting domains, where they'll just be, hey, a common typo that somebody would enter. So a good example of this is 4BIS.com. In the Outlook font, a capital L and a lowercase L and a capital I are identical in the Outlook font. So we've actually bought 4BLS.com just so somebody can't use it against us. And so that's what I encourage a lot of companies to do. Is it doesn't cost you that much, but it's a little bit of extra insurance to know that, hey, somebody can't register an email address under 4BLS.com and then use that to spam our customers and try to do those sorts of things. You might want to consider doing that for your business and register those common changes so that they can't be used against you. It's a few, $10, $20 a year for some really good insurance, right, per domain name.
Gotcha. Yeah, so hackers typically start with some of the information that's available publicly, right? Mm-hmm. Things that they can find on the website, your social media, that sort of thing. Okay. They're looking. How do I know if I'm a business owner? How do I know what threats are? How am I vulnerable? How vulnerable am I on the internet? How do I check that? Is there a way I can go in and scan something, check it, or is that something you guys do?
Yeah, so we help businesses go through and figure out what their vulnerabilities lie. And where partially of their vulnerabilities sit is how prepared they are to deal for the unexpected. How much are they looking for the unusual behavior that's happening on their systems? How much are they looking for impossible logins or impossible travel logins? So that'll be somebody logging in from the Cincinnati area and an impossible time to travel there, they're logging in from Seattle. Or unusual behavior, especially in email, of addresses getting mailbox move requests that are happening and moving your email to another folder. Well, we've talked about that in the past. We also will look on internal networks for things like, I have a end user who never looks for this sort of information, and now all of a sudden they are trying to do net account lookups and ARP table lookups and things that you don't even know what they are,
Right.
but a hacker does, and that's called something living off the land. And so you want to look for that behavior and say, hey, why is this happening? Why is this IT-ish behavior happening on my network at weird times and on weird user accounts? And then verify, is that IT actually doing things, or is this a potential threat actor in my network and doing that? Then from there, you look at how prepared you are to handle what that is, and then be able to respond to that attack that's happening, and then recover from that situation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So when that brings me to my next point. So I'm still hearing a lot of different businesses tell me that they have that IT guy who is doing all of that. So how are they? If you just describe the portion of what you just said, so that's one person supposed to be looking at that, providing IT support, fixing printers, getting people locked out of their account, or locked in, or getting access back to their accounts, getting on their computer, that sort of thing. And one person can't do all that.
Right.
Let's be realistic.
Right. They can, but it's very hard. So effectively, no, one person can't do it because they serve different masters. And IT and cybersecurity have two different things that they do. And IT's job is to get the end user working as fast as possible, kind of no matter what. Cybersecurity's job is to say, hey, wait a second, is what I'm doing causing a vulnerability to happen that would put the business at risk? And cybersecurity is really about business risk and business risk management and mitigation. And so when you look at that, there's two different goals of those things. Well, we have to have somebody that oversees all that. So we have people here at 4BIS that do really the IT support, and they're trained in cybersecurity. And then we have people who focus on the cybersecurity side. But then we also have governance and management that goes on top of that and says, okay, we realize we're not going to be able to put everything in a plastic bubble. It has to be used. It can't all be hermetically sealed or air gapped. So we have to have end users use it. There has to be some inherent trust there that allows that item to be used for people to do business and to do their jobs. So at what level is enough cybersecurity? Is what level is where the cybersecurity is sometimes getting in the way of the end users because it's something super sensitive like employee information and financials, or it's something like marketing data, which isn't that critical, and we can let the speed of that be a little bit faster. Well, that takes people that you can bounce ideas off of and talk through these scenarios. The other thing that's a really big secret of this is just a ton of training, an absolute ton of training. And so at 4BIS, we're at some kind of training generally once a month, just to get boned up on cybersecurity more, to find out what the new tradecraft is, to learn the new defense tactics, to learn all these things. If you're the IT person at an organization, you don't have time to go away for 3-4 days of training every single month. You just don't have the ability to do so. And do you want to take vacation and you want to do these types of items? And so it's really, really difficult to do if you don't have a team. It's really difficult to be on 24/7. And to have the resources to work with the partners that you need to do, to vet out the partners. There's a lot that goes into it, and it can be done. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is incredibly hard, and that's where working with an organization that has the flexibility, they have the bandwidth to handle it, and they have the experience is key.
Gotcha. Yeah, so even with your experience, would you say, what would be your confidence level? You have 10 users, you have to do adequate cybersecurity and IT support. Do you, even with all your experience, do you think that's something you could pull off?
No, I don't think so. Because the fact of the matter is, what is going to happen to my users while I'm away learning about the tradecraft, learning about the anti-hacking techniques, learning how to do the hacking so I know how to block them whenever they come through? What happens then? What do my users have as a backup for whenever I'm gone? What happens to the information whenever I'm not there? Whether I'm on vacation or, heaven forbid, I have some kind of health issue or something like that, that can happen. Or we look at the things as, will stuff be documented? Do you even know what best practices are? How do you talk these things out with people who have the understanding of what you're doing to say, hey, if I was a hacker, what would I be doing in this scenario? And so, I could probably do it until something bad happened.
Oh,
and then something bad happened, and I would find out what my weaknesses were, and I'd find out what I wasn't doing because different priorities came up, and I just don't think it would adequately be done. And I can tell you this, I wouldn't want to do it by myself.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense too. Plus, there's every position in an IT company is going to be the same. Some person might be responsible, like you said earlier, for support side of things. One person's looking at logs and different things. It's almost like you go to a car dealership and you're expecting the salesperson you talk to be able to go back there and also fix your car at the same time, right? It's just not going to happen. It's not feasible.
And those people do exist. There is the person that can sell it to you and the person that can fix it. But you are sometimes going to be paying for them to be trained to figure out how to fix it, because they're not going to know how to fix everything, and they're going to have to learn on your dollar as the client of how to fix that sort of item. They don't have the experience. They might have come across these things just now for the first time, but you really, really do want to have an organization of people who have the experience, who have the training, who know that you can rely on and lean on if something happens. And a really big thing that goes on is, what if we're busy? What if that person's busy? What if they're supposed to be fixing your car and a new sale comes in the door? Are they going to be like, oh no, Mr. New Sale, I can't do you right now. I got to go fix this car. Or are they going to put the car on hold and try to sell the thing? And now have they sold too many things that they're not able to fix? And are they set up to scale correctly? Do they have the business processes in place to be able to grow and to be able to support more people, or to be able to actively support the people that they have? We're over-provisioned here as far as the amount of techs that we have. We carry more techs than we do work because we know that there's going to be times whenever it gets slammed, and we provision ourselves for those times.
So where do you think this confidence comes from when a lot of people tell me that, hey, I have a guy, they're doing everything, he lets me know all the things he's doing for cybersecurity, and we don't have any issues on the support side. Where do you think is that from, like a lack of knowledge that they have about cybersecurity in general, or just IT in general, or where do you think that kind of confidence comes from, and why they think one person could do that all?
Well, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about what cybersecurity is. So we'll start there. Cybersecurity in our eyes is about preventing the three bad things from happening. And we think of these as global outcomes. And I've talked about them before, but we'll continue talking about them because they're the really most critical things for most businesses that we deal with. One, it's protecting the financials and protecting somebody from getting direct access to the financials or getting in the middle of a financial transaction and stealing the money that way. Two, it's about sensitive data. Every company has sensitive data. I don't care what they say. You have employee records. You have records that you wouldn't want the public to get. And so the bad guys know this. And so they get in the middle of this data, they steal it, and then they blackmail you to say that we're not going to release it publicly or that we're going to delete it. Then three is your operations. The hackers know that if they can get in and stop your operations, you're more likely to pay a ransom. And so what do you do to prevent those three bad outcomes from happening? And that's a lot of what we focus on. But we see a lot of businesses that'll talk to us and we do audits with them, and we'll come across and they're like, hey, I don't rely on computers that much. And we'll go and look, and realistically, there's a huge chunk of their operations that they do and they don't even realize. Or we don't have any sensitive data, and they have all these old records of employee information and social security numbers and financials and client lists and things like that they want to have get out there. And then just direct access to the money. And I've seen situations where I've been able to go audit a place and log into their payroll accounts, and I would have been able to change somebody's payroll. I've seen instances where I can find out the financials just by some thing being insecured correctly. And where you look at the financials, not only do we get in a situation of, hey, if I can't steal the money directly, what the hackers will do is if they can get access to your financials and they know how much money you have, then they know that you can pay a ransom and that you can afford it because you have this money sitting in the bank. Even if they can't get access to it, they know how much they can ask for that you realistically pay. There's a lot that goes on with this, and we see a lot of businesses not even realize what the risks are. And then a huge portion of this on top of that is they don't realize what they're up against. They tell me all the time that we're too small to get hacked. that they're anonymous. They don't really realize what's going on in the industry. They don't realize how the hacking organizations are set up. And so when we look at, I'm too small to get hacked, what that just means is you're not on somebody's radar yet.
Right.
And what happens is business email compromise has been massively on the rise. We've seen a huge uptick over it in the last 18 months. It's the biggest piece of initial access into a system. And what we're seeing from that is you're not on the radar until generally you get onto a business email compromise or somebody you interact with gets their email taken over and the hackers now know you exist. And they'll say, hey, I can get access to this manufacturing organization. And a hacking organization that specializes in manufacturers will then get into you and they realize that, okay, your operations may be everything to you. And if I can shut down your operations, even if it's for a day or two, then you're willing to pay a ransom. And that might not be the case for another organization that has more financials as their big risk factor or more sensitive data as their risk factor. And so you want to look at all these things and do that. So when I look as I'm too small to get hacked, it's just you're not on somebody's radar yet. When you are, it's going to become a big problem. And then you have the hacking organizations themselves. So we see a big problem that people don't understand what they're up against. And these organizations, they're set up like large groups, they're set up like large companies. They have middle managers, they have reports that they have to do, they have quotas that they have to meet.
Right.
And so experienced, skilled hackers, they will develop hacking techniques and playbooks for lower level employees to follow to be able to execute. And so we're not at our level that we're dealing with small, medium business, we're not going up against the same hacker that's going to go after a GE. We're dealing with the ones that are going to go after smaller companies. So it's the people that they've developed scripts for. Well, if you can make it difficult for them to do their jobs, then they will potentially look for other places. What they'll say is, hey, I can get into this company and I think I can get a $100,000 ransomware payment if I give a hacker 10 hours to hack this. Well, that's a huge return on investment. That's a very good bang for their buck. And we see this happen all the time with places that have been encrypted. We would have been able to stop, and they would have had maybe a compromise of an endpoint, but we would have been able to stop one of the three bad outcomes from happening if they would have been looking for the right things, if they would have gotten on top of it faster. And really, it's going to take people to almost wake up, realize what they're actually up against, realize what's actually out there, and know that they can fight against it. They don't have to be scared and say, hey, this is something that's never going to happen. I'm just going to pretend it's never going to happen and stick my head in the sand. But if they realistically wake up and learn that to do the proper defenses, that they can fight back and make it hard for these hackers, and eventually, if enough companies do this, this goes away.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I agree with you. I think a big part of that is just the lack of knowledge about it. All that goes in, everything that goes that's involved with the hacking side of things, just knowing more about cybersecurity is definitely going to help. Now, do you think it's possible that some companies actually throw up blinders to purposely kind of just know that they're not doing this part, but they know they might need it? Because I know I've talked to some companies where they understand that they need to do more for cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. They are just not willing to do that. Is that where could that be coming from? Is that still kind of that they just don't know, or that they just don't want to know?
Well, man, we're getting into some psychological conversations here, and I think there's a lot of different factors for what causes that to happen. I think one of the big ones is that there's just not enough companies raising their hands and saying, this happened to me, and I wish I would have done these things to prevent it from happening to you. And I look at this like cancer. Back in the day, when people got cancer, it used to be this very whispered hush thing. Like, oh, did you hear so-and-so got cancer? Like it was that person's fault that they got cancer. And now, as we've learned more about this, we know that a lot of people are going to get cancer. As the population is aging and we're not dying from other things that would have potentially hurt us or injured us or killed us, then cancer is going to be a more prevalent thing in every one of our lives as we get older. And so getting screened early, knowing that this could happen to you, and doing the protections can often cause you to have a much better survivability, to not have it impact your life as fully than if you just ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist. And so we need the same sort of thing to happen with cybersecurity. Oh, did you hear so-and-so got hacked? Yeah, man, it was unfortunate. They've really learned and strengthened themselves from there, and I don't think it's going to happen to them again. And so once more companies realize, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this, and I preach so much about it. I've been sitting across the table from a new client that we picked up that day, and they've gotten ransomed. and I have to go and say, okay, every single one of your devices are encrypted. You're looking at restoring to 18-month-old data because you didn't have an adequate backup, or the hackers went in and deleted your backup, which we see often. Are you willing to pay a ransom in order to get your business running? And that is a really, really tough conversation that if I can prevent that from happening to anybody, I'm going to do everything in my power to do so. And that's why we're really trying to educate people, and that's why we're trying to get people to wake up to what's out there and then adequately protect and defend themselves.
Now, is there a way, because there's obviously some reputational risk that, if you were to report when you were getting hacked, like you said, but is there a way that people can do that anonymously?
Well, I mean, you can report some stuff to the FBI. They have a report that can go out to businesses. But what ends up happening is if you don't hear from your peers, you think that that's just a number that exists inside the United States, that it's not going to be me.
Right.
And, I've had health scares, and it causes you to wake up and look at things differently. You always know that it could happen to you, and it's part of human nature to just say, that's a tomorrow problem. I got a billion other things to worry about until something wakes you up enough. And here's the dirty truth in our industry. Nobody wants to pay for cybersecurity until after they've been hacked. And I say nobody, it's relatively speaking, but it's very difficult to get somebody to buy the cybersecurity they need until they've felt the pain of a massive hack. And then it's almost like whatever money you needed to make sure that this doesn't happen again is open. And if I could just get people to do that beforehand, it's way easier to protect these companies before they've been hacked. The hackers talk to each other. They tell you that Bob, whatever company got hacked, and keep trying them. And when I look at companies that we picked up after they got hacked, and I compare their firewall logs to other companies or their Office 365 attempts, they're 10 times higher, if not more, of attempts being made against them because they know that a lot of places don't adequately protect themselves after they've been hacked, and that it's likely to get hit again. And so it's just a really big thing. If we can get it to happen beforehand, everything becomes easier.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And that's one of the main reasons why we're doing this podcast, like he said, to educate everybody so they can make that informed decision before the bad thing were to happen. And I got to agree. I used to roll through 9 out of 10 stop signs. This did not come to a full stop. I would go almost to a full stop and then keep it going. And I made it 30-something years doing that until I finally got my ticket for that $185 ticket. And then now I stop at them all. Even if I don't see I look around for a cop still, but, I still make sure I come to a complete stop. And had I realized, if it would have happened to me sooner, I probably would have done something different. I would have probably made that change a lot sooner, just like what we're experiencing when these companies are getting hacked. So, gotcha. No, that's a great answer, John. So when it comes to, obviously, small to medium business is one of the bigger targets, right? And you kind of had mentioned this. The bigger companies are locking themselves down, right? So if I'm going to be a hacker, I want to try to make a quick buck. I'm going to go after someone who doesn't have anything, and that's what we're seeing pretty much, right?
Yeah, well, what we're seeing is people are, and I've talked about this many times, and I'll continue to talk about it because it's one of the big issues we see, is people doing the cybersecurity of realistically a decade ago. And so they have a spam filter, they have an EDR type antivirus, they'll have a firewall, and occasionally the only modern thing that they'll do is have multi-factor authentication in places. Well, it's just not enough. And so they're not looking for the nefarious behavior. They're not looking for the behavior of what hackers are doing today, which is something called living off the land. They're using IT processes against you, things that will never trigger an EDR antivirus to fire. Say, if somebody tries to download TeamViewer on your computer, do you know that TeamViewer is not supposed to be on there? The EDR antivirus is going to allow it pretty much every time because it's a legitimate application.
Right.
Well, hackers are using applications like that in order to gain access to systems and then run scripts against them, look to gain lateral movement, and then move from system to system. And it's really what they're doing. And most small, medium businesses are not looking out for the type of behavior that we're seeing hackers use. And it's not taking a genius to do this anymore. It's not taking one of their high-level hacking geniuses to do it. They come up with processes and procedures that they give out to employees of these hacking organizations, and they say, run these scripts. And then once they do so, they get access and they take it over, and then one of the three bad things happen.
So you had mentioned living off the land. What's the longest amount of time you've seen a hacker get access and not make a move to get detected, if that makes sense? How long do you think that they were in there before they actually decided to make moves and try to do some things, download ransomware, whatever the case may be?
It varies. We've seen instances of places where it's been months, where somebody's been in there gathering data. Normally for these small networks and small businesses, they're kind of in there for a dozen days or so, gathering data. A lot of what it is once they do gain access, they need to let their systems export the data. So we'll go and find instances where 300 gigs of data was exfiltrated out of a system. And what that is your sensitive company information is sent out, and they'll hide it as some other transaction to go through so it doesn't eat up all your bandwidth and alert potentially a network provider or an item like that, so that you can they can then use that to blackmail you to get that data back. But it's really 20 days or so. And what we look at is somebody clicks on something, we start to see nefarious behavior. If we can get that detection time down to within minutes and then have it stopped before it spreads laterally on your network and starts to become a really big cleanup, that's kind of the goal that we're looking for. And so it's not that we're giving up, and we're not saying that we're going to not protect all the things that we can, but we're going to be realistic about it and say this was a big failure in the IT industry. We said we were going to protect everything. Well, not everything can be protected. And so we're going to say we realize that something could get through, then how fast can we detect that thing that's gotten through the net and then respond and recover from that so it has the least organizational impact as possible.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's a great way to basically describe cybersecurity in a nutshell, right? If it's going to happen, you can't protect everything 100%. Once it does happen, limit the blast rate.
Well, you can't protect everything in life either.
Yeah, very true.
You have kids, I have kids. They're going to injure themselves. There's going to be things that happen that they hurt themselves, but that's part of growing and that's part of learning. And so you have to allow things like that for them to grow and get better as a person. Or an organization is the same way. You have to have inherent risk. You have to allow risk in order for the organization to do what it needs to do and grow and get better and be resilient. But you have to say that has to be within a box, and we're going to put certain things in that so that you can't hurt yourself too badly.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, and actually, John, I had one question written down. I wanted to make sure I asked you this question. Okay. I didn't want to forget it. So if you could give SMB leaders one piece of advice to reduce their cyber risk, what would it be?
Don't just blindly trust that you're safe. Go and get a second opinion. Make sure you know what's going on with your cybersecurity. Don't just completely off-ship this and say, somebody else takes care of it for me and I never have to think about it. Go verify and say, hey, is what I'm doing enough? Ask hard questions of your IT provider. Ask hard questions of your IT person. Have them prove what they're doing. Because any provider worth their weight will be able to say, we are doing this because of this reason and this is what that does. And so get your cybersecurity literacy up. It's one of the most important things for your business. Your business generally relies on computers and technology. And stop just blindly saying, okay, no, we got this, it's good.
Yeah, and if you're curious to know what kind of questions to ask your IT team, we put a lot of information on our website. Feel free to check us out there. Check out our blog section under our Learning Center, or give us a call. We'd be more than happy to help give you that ammunition you need to make sure that your company is protected. That's all we got for today. John, I appreciate your time today as always.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Uninterrupted, a podcast from 4BIS Cybersecurity. We hope you walked away with practical insights to protect your business and stay ahead of the latest cyber threats. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your colleagues. For more tips, resources, and cybersecurity updates, visit 4BIS, that's 4BIS.com, and follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook. We'll be back soon with another episode, so stay vigilant and stay uninterrupted.